Hello, and thanks for stopping by. When it comes to very tall buildings, London is a relative newcomer. Most of the city's loftiest landmarks, such as 30 St Mary Axe, better known as the Gherkin, the Heron Tower at 110 Bishopsgate, and of course the Shard, all popped up in the current century. Whilst Tower 42, formerly the NatWest Tower, and 1 Canada Square at Canary Wharf are a little older, having been completed in 1980 and 1991 respectively. London's original high-rise though, and one of the city's most unique buildings, is the BT Tower. The BT Tower, which in the past has also been known as the Post Office Tower, the GPO Tower, the London Telecom Tower, and as we'll see later, several more names, is a true icon of the Swinging Sixties, having opened back in 1965. Looming like an Apollo moon rocket over the streets of Fitzrovia, the tower stands at 177 metres, or 581 feet, tall, and was the tallest building in Britain for a decade and a half, a record it held until 1980 when the aforementioned NatWest Tower opened for business in London's Financial Square Mile. The BT Tower has an intriguing history, including a secret Cold War role, a revolving restaurant, a mysterious terror attack, numerous appearances in film and television, and much more. And in this video, I'd like to share its story with you. The BT Tower holds pride of place on a block formed by Cleveland Street, Cleveland Mews, Howland Street, and Maple Street. Maple Street, off of Tottenham Court Road, being its official address. Although technically, and rather bizarrely, this obvious fact was supposedly classified until the 1990s, more of which later. When it was built as the Post Office Tower, this slender structure's primary purpose was to significantly boost the nation's telephone and television networks, although it wasn't the first communications building to be associated with this area of London. Just southeast of the tower, on North Crescent, off of Cheney Street, you'll find the Old Museum Telephone Exchange, which was so called because it's located close to the British Museum. This facility, now tucked behind the entrance to an old World War II bunker, opened in 1914 and was used to handle long-distance phone calls, known as trunk calls, between London and other parts of the UK. In 1939, the Museum Telephone Exchange was expanded with the opening of a new, larger facility on Howland Street, which went by the same name. This second Museum Telephone Exchange was fitted with a tall lattice tower on its roof, which in 1949 was used to successfully relay 405 line television from the BBC's Alexandra Palace studio to a transmitter at Sutton Coldfield in the West Midlands, making Birmingham the first place outside London and the home counties to receive regular television broadcasts. By the 1950s, with ever-increasing numbers of people using telephones and television sets, it became clear that Britain needed a faster, more efficient way to handle the growing volume of communications. The answer lay with microwave transmissions, compact radio waves that can beam huge amounts of information. Microwaves, which had come to the fore with radar technology during the Second World War, did have one major drawback though. Because they travel in straight lines, they require a clear path, with no hills, buildings or other obstructions in the way. It was for this reason then, in the House of Commons, on the 1st of February 1961, it was announced that a tall microwave tower would be built in central London, a structure high enough to relay such beams, unhindered, to similar towers across the country. In order to make such an imposing structure more palatable, It was also to be designed as an attractive landmark in its own right, complete with a public viewing area and restaurant. This announcement didn't come out of the blue. Research and development of such a tower had been underway since the mid-1950s at the Post Office Research Centre in Dollis Hill, North London, the UK's telephone system in those days being operated by the General Post Office, hence the tower originally being known as both the Post Office Tower and the GPO Tower. Responsibility for constructing the tower went to the Ministry of Public Works and its chief architect, Eric Bedford. Bedford was primarily known for designing diplomatic buildings, such as the British Embassy in Washington DC, although you can see one of his more intimate works in St James's Park, this graceful blue bridge. The main contractor for the job, meanwhile, was Peter Linden Company, whose other major London work is the current incarnation of Waterloo Bridge, completed in 1945. It's almost worn away now, but you can still just about see Peter Linden's name etched into a commemorative stone on the bridge. Work on building the Post Office Tower commenced in April 1961, and as you might imagine, such a structure required exceptionally solid foundations. In London, this has always been a challenge, as the city sits upon a bed of blue clay, which, although perfect for tunnelling projects such as the Underground, makes the construction of deep foundations more complex, and is one of the reasons why true high-rise buildings didn't begin to appear in the capital until the 1960s. The Post Office Tower's foundations were handled by an Italian engineering firm who sank a large, thick concrete raft deep below the ground. A concrete pyramid with a flat top was then placed on top of this raft, and it's this base which supports the tower's core. The tower, which according to this late 1940s map occupies a space once marked by significant blitz damage, was designed to incorporate the 1930s museum telephone exchange, and indeed, during the early days of its construction, the tower was often referred to as the Museum Tower. Those employed on the project had a more affectionate name for it though. They simply called it the Pot. As the Post Office Tower gradually rose skyward, a 16-ton crane with a 65-foot boom climbed with it, being jacked up by an average of 16 feet or just under 5 meters per week. Before long, this crane could be seen from all over London and became something of a landmark in its own right, a testament to the hardiness of the men who were working high up on the emerging tower, often toiling away in wind speeds of over 35 miles per hour. Tragically, in September 1961, when the crane was first been erected, it toppled, sending 5 men plunging 60 feet to the ground. One of who, a 27-year-old Irishman named Daniel Joseph Shanafin, was killed. Another fatality occurred in November 1964, although in this case it was not a construction worker, when a man named Frank Goldsmith, who was suffering from poor mental health, absconded from nearby University College Hospital. After gaining access to the building site, Frank Goldsmith climbed to what was then the 450 feet summit of the tower and leapt off. It must be said that, looking at the hair-raising images of the tower being built, it's a miracle there were not more fatalities. Once complete, the Post Office Tower, which weighs in at 13,000 tonnes, came with a price tag of £2 million, roughly 40 million in today's money. The tower opened in 2 stages, the first being the inauguration of its telecommunication systems, which were fired up on the 8th of October 1965 by the then Prime Minister Harold Wilson. It's for this reason that you can see Wilson's famous quote, "Forged in the white heat of scientific revolution," written near the tower on Cleveland Street. After being whisked up in one of the high-speed lifts, which were ultra-modern for their time, taking just 34 seconds to reach the top, the Prime Minister telephoned the Lord Mayor of Birmingham, Alderman G. Corbyn Barrow, for a chat. The two men also appeared to each other on television screens, meaning this was essentially an early form of video call. It's interesting to note that, on the opening day, Wilson suggested the post office tower should adopt the nickname Big Bedford, in honour of its architect, Eric Bedford. This never caught on though, which I think's a real shame. There was even a competition, open to post office staff, with a £10 prize, to come up with a fancy official title for the tower. Suggestions included the Pointer, the Spindle, the A's, the Teddy Tower, and my personal favourite, the Teddy Beacon. In the end though, it was decided the post office tower worked best, even though that name would later change. Once in operation, the post office tower could handle up to 150,000 separate telephone calls at once. With the capacity for 40 channels, it also revolutionised television in Britain, enabling colour broadcasting and the transmission of live events to and from the UK. The 1966 World Cup final, the 1969 moon landing, and the wedding of Charles and Diana in 1981, for example, were among the many major events routed through the tower's distinctive dishes. Speaking of television, the tower has appeared in many TV shows and films over the years, especially in the 1960s when it was still something of a novelty. It features prominently, for example, in the 1966 Doctor Who serial Doctor Who and the War Machines, in which even the Doctor himself, played by William Hartnell, is impressed by the then brand new building.
So that's it.
What? Oh, the tower. It's finished.
Isn't that interesting? Very interesting.
It's great, isn't it?
In the Doctor Who story, it transpires the post office tower is home to a dangerous, self-thinking computer called Wotan, which has come to the conclusion that the world cannot progress further with mankind running it. Sounds like an early warning about artificial intelligence, doesn't it? Prior to Doctor Who, the post office tower starred in the 1965 musical comedy Three Hats for Lisa, filmed back when it was still under construction.
This is going to be the restaurant. And all the time you're sitting here noshing, it'll be moving round slowly. God.
Another film featuring the tower is 1967's Bedazzled, in which the devil, played by Peter Cook, beams Dudley Moore up into a rather precarious position. And also from 1967 is Smashing Time, which comes to a climax when the revolving restaurant spins out of control. I'll be showing you more of the restaurant soon. Returning to television, the post office tower was one of the major landmarks featured on the famous Thames Television ident, which appeared in various forms between 1968 and 1992. It can also be seen briefly in the 1981 adaptation of John Wyndham's Day of the Triffids, looking eerily abandoned and overgrown in the wake of a global catastrophe. Perhaps the most famous appearance of the GPO tower though, albeit in model form, is the 1971 Goodies episode Kitten Kong, in which a little cat called Twinkle grows to an immense size and proceeds to climb up the tower, ultimately causing it to collapse. The post office tower's second opening ceremony took place on the 19th of May 1966, when the viewing galleries and restaurant were finally unveiled to the public. This event was conducted by Tony Benn, the then Postmaster General, who, in his speech, suggested that the tower would redefine what it meant to be a Cockney, saying that rather being born within the sound of Bow Bells, a true Londoner would now be a person born within the site of the post office tower. Well, I'm happy to say that's a definition that certainly applies to me. Once open, the post office tower proved immensely popular. 50,000 people visited in the first 3 weeks alone, and a long queue of tourists stretching along Maple Street was a common sight throughout the late 1960s and early 70s. After passing through the lobby, visitors were ushered into the high-speed lifts by staff dressed in smart red uniforms. Interestingly, these lifts, unlike those in other buildings, were specifically designed to be used for evacuation in the event of a fire, an unusual feature that required legislation through an Act of Parliament. It would appear this was required due to the tower's staircase being so narrow, as seen in this 1969 footage in which a group of university students had a punishing race to the top. Up above, there were 3 viewing levels open to the public, all stacked above the tower's microwave dishes. These galleries were open 7 days a week, from between 9 and 9:30 am to 10 o'clock at night. Entry was 4 shillings for adults and 2 shillings for children, about £4 and £2 in today's money. Back down below, there was a gift shop in which you could buy miniature models of the tower, and post letters in order to obtain a special post office tower postmark. And as seen in this footage from 1967, there was a guidebook too, which I'm pleased to say is available for free to read online. If you'd like to see it, I'll leave a link in the description below. The post office tower's restaurant, called the Top of the Tower, was rather more exclusive than the viewing galleries. Located 500 feet up on the 34th floor, it was run by Butlins, the company better known for their chain of holiday camps, who beat the Aberdeen Angus Steakhouse chain of restaurants to the lucrative contract. The food was heavily inspired by French cuisine, and indeed, as seen here, the menu was written in French. What would you have gone for? As a fire precaution, the restaurant's compact kitchen was fully electric and situated above the dining area. The chefs, who mainly came from France, Italy and Spain, would send orders down in modern dumb waiters. The kitchen storeroom, including the wine cellar, meanwhile, was located at the very bottom of the tower, meaning the ingredients had to be sent up on request in the tower's main lift. Those visiting the restaurant entered via a dedicated entrance on Maple Street, marked by this snazzy rotating logo, and were whisked up directly to the cocktail lounge, perched just above the dining area. The dining area itself had capacity for 130 people, and famously, the outer floor rotated, providing an ever-changing view of the city far below. The rotating mechanism, which is still in working order and driven by small 2-horsepower motors, was built by an Ipswich-based firm, who tested the platform at their workshop by serving a meal to the company's executives at ground level. The rotation itself was of course slow and gentle, otherwise it would have made diners feel queasy, taking about 20 minutes to complete one full turn. Dining out at the tower was expensive, costing an average of £4 to £5 per head, about £60 to £80 in today's money, although for that you were also presented with a special certificate of orbit to prove you'd eaten at the top. Naturally, the top of the tower attracted many celebrities, including Mick Jagger, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles and Muhammad Ali. Considering it was Britain's tallest building for a good many years, complete with a glamorous restaurant at the summit, it may come as some surprise to hear that until the early 1990s, the post office tower was, technically, an official secret. This meant it was illegal to photograph the tower in certain contexts. What those contexts were exactly, I'm not sure. If you do, please let me know in the comments. And it was also omitted from many maps, although this wasn't always strictly enforced, as this example from 1971 shows. As ludicrous as this sounds, there was in fact a valid reason for the tower's covert side. You see, it must be remembered that the post office tower was constructed at the height of the Cold War, back when the threat of a Soviet nuclear attack was taken very seriously. Had a Third World War erupted, the British government had plans in place to maintain a degree of communication via a secret plan codenamed Backbone, which would have relied upon the nation's network of microwave towers, such as those at Birmingham and Manchester, working in conjunction with the post office tower in London. Even before the tower went up, the site in Fitzrovia had been commandeered for such a role. In the 1950s, the post office linked the museum telephone exchange to a highly classified and extensive network of tunnels beneath London, designed to carry government communications cables, a system later exposed by the journalist Duncan Campbell in the early 1980s. When designing the post office tower, Eric Bedford had to make sure the tall structure would be able to withstand very high winds. Officially, this was to maintain stability of the tower's dishes, whose transmissions could be knocked out if the tower swayed too much. And unofficially, it was also to give the tower a fighting chance of withstanding a nuclear blast. That's why the tower is cylindrical. Apparently, curved buildings are better suited to withstanding such force, a phenomenon that was seen to some extent at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, most famously Hiroshima's former Product Exhibition Hall, which now forms part of the city's Peace Memorial. Another feature designed to provide stability is this, the so-called concrete collar, which looms over Cleveland Mews, gripping the tower like a vice. How the post office tower would have really fared in the face of a hydrogen bomb though, is anyone's guess. It wasn't quite as powerful as a nuclear bomb, but in the early hours of Sunday the 31st of October 1971, a device exploded inside the post office tower. The bomb, a plastic explosive, was planted in the women's lavatory on the 33rd floor viewing gallery. It's believed whoever placed it there was posing as a diner at the top of the tower restaurant the night before. Fortunately, as the bomb detonated at 4:30 AM, no members of the public were present, and there were no injuries, although the blast caused considerable damage, sending debris raining down to the streets below, a large chunk of which narrowly missed a passing taxi. 2 telephone calls relating to the bomb were made. The first, from a female caller, came at 9 PM the night before. This mysterious person stated that the bomb had been planted and was due to go off at 9:25 PM, although when staff conducted a search, they were unable to find the device. It's believed whoever made this call was a member of the Angry Brigade, a small group of anarchists who were active in the early 70s. The second call came not long after the bomb went off. This one, phoned into the Press Association on Fleet Street, came from someone identifying themselves as a member of the Kilburn Battalion of the IRA, who claimed it was they who were responsible. The true identity of whoever and whatever group planted the post office tower bomb though remains a mystery, and unfortunately the terror attack would have a significant impact on the tower's fortunes. Between 1966 and 1971, some 4.5 million people visited the tower's viewing galleries. In the wake of the 1971 bomb attack though, the viewing levels were closed to the public, and have remained so ever since. The top of the tower restaurant did remain open, although only until 1980, when the lease expired. The last service took place on the 14th of June that year. Not long after that, when British Telecom was established, the post office tower was rebranded as the London Telecom Tower. The name changed again in the 1990s, when British Telecom switched to BT, thus giving us the current name, the BT Tower. Today, the BT Tower features a 360-degree LED screen around its summit, which sometimes displays news and messages, including a famous incident in 2019 when a Windows error message popped up for the whole city to see. Despite being such a prominent London landmark though, the tower currently stands by, quiet and frustratingly inaccessible. Things look due to change though. In 2024, the tower was sold for £275 million to the American MCR Hotels Company, who do indeed intend to transform the tower into a hotel. So who knows? In years to come, it may be possible to once again enjoy the view from the top, although I imagine it will cost a lot more than 4 shillings to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at the history of the BT Tower, and as always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Are you a fan of the building? And were you fortunate enough to visit the viewing galleries, or indeed the restaurant, back when they were open? If so, please be sure to let me know in the comments. If you haven't yet subscribed to Robslondon, then I'd appreciate it very much if you could please consider doing so, as this, along with clicking the bell icon to receive notifications, will ensure that you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus of course, it'd be wonderful to have you along. If you're feeling extra generous, you can also support my work with a tip via either my Ko-fi account, which I'll link below, or the YouTube thanks button, which appears as a heart icon beneath the video. Any such financial donations are of course greatly appreciated, and they really do help go towards creating content. Anyway, on that note, thanks again for watching friends. Stay well, and please be sure to stay tuned.